How far do you think a 1,974 Mercury Marquis can go on just $10 of gas? Take a guess. 50 miles? Maybe 100? What if I told you the answer might shock you? For many car lovers, especially those who grew up in the golden age of American automobiles, cars like the Mercury Marquis represent something more than just transportation. They remind us of a time when cars were built like tanks, engines roared with unfiltered power, and gas was so cheap that fuel economy didn't even cross your mind. But today, everything has changed. Gas prices have skyrocketed, modern cars sip fuel instead of gulping it, and the idea of driving a 7.5L V8 daily sounds almost ridiculous. But just how impractical is it? Could a car that once ruled the highways still be driven today without emptying your wallet? How far would it take you if you had only $10 to spend at the gas pump? That's what we're about to find out, and trust me, the answer will surprise you. Why this question matters, some might ask. Why even bother with this question? After all, nobody is buying a Mercury Marquis today for fuel efficiency. But that's not the point. This is about nostalgia, curiosity, and a reality check. If you were around in the 1970s, you probably remember a time when gas was cheap, big V8s ruled the roads, and fuel economy wasn't even in the conversation. Cars like the Mercury Marquis, Lincoln Continental, and Cadillac Fleetwood were built for comfort, not efficiency. They had massive engines, luxurious interiors, and a presence on the road that no modern car can match. But fast forward to today. Gas prices have soared, emissions laws have tightened, and fuel economy is now one of the biggest selling points for new cars. So the real question isn't just how far the Marquis can go on $10 of gas, but rather how much has the world really changed? And here's something to think about. If you had a time machine and went back to 1974 with the same $10, how much farther could you go? The difference will blow your mind. Stay till the end for a reward before we dive deep into the numbers. Here's a little reward for those who stick around until the end. We'll not only reveal how far a 1974 Mercury Marquis can go on $10 today, but we'll also show you how much farther it could have gone in $1,974. The difference will make you wish you could fill up your tank in the past. So buckle up and stay with us as we explore this fascinating journey through time, gas prices, and the reality of driving a true American classic in today's world. Let's take a moment to appreciate just how much the world has changed since the 1974 Mercury Marquis first hit the roads. Back then, the average price of gas in the United States was around 53 cents per gallon. In today's money, that's about $3.50 to $4 per gallon, adjusted for inflation. Sounds reasonable, right? But here's the catch. Gas isn't priced by inflation alone. Other factors like supply and demand, government policies, and global oil markets have pushed today's gas prices much higher than simple inflation would suggest. Now, consider this. In 1974, $10 would buy you nearly 19 gallons of gas. That's almost a full tank for a Mercury Marquis. Fast forward to today, and $10 barely gets you 2 or 3 gallons, depending on where you live. That's a staggering difference. But it also raises an interesting question. How much did fuel consumption matter back then, when gas was dirt cheap? The 1974 Mercury Marquis, a gas guzzler? To understand what we're dealing with, let's take a closer look at the Mercury Marquis itself. Under the hood, this beast came with a 7.5L, 460 cubic inch V8 engine, one of the largest ever fitted to a passenger car. It was built for power, smooth acceleration, and effortless highway cruising. Efficiency? That was an afterthought. At best, this car delivered around 10 to 12 miles per gallon, MPG, under ideal conditions. In city driving, it could dip as low as 7 or 8 MPG, especially if you had a heavy foot on the gas pedal. Compare that to a modern mid-size sedan that easily gets 30 to 40 MPG, and the difference becomes painfully clear. But here's where things get interesting. Back in 1974, no one really cared about miles per gallon. Cars were about comfort, power, and presence. People didn't ask how much gas does it use, they asked how smooth is the ride, how big is the engine. It was a completely different mindset. Fuel economy? Not a concern in the 1970s. The 1970s were a time when American cars were built with excess in mind. The bigger the better. The more cylinders, the more impressive. The idea of fuel economy being a selling point didn't gain traction until the mid to late 1000s, 970s, when the oil crisis forced people to rethink their gas-guzzling habits. Before that, cars like the Mercury Marquis were designed to float down the highway, offering a plush, whisper-quiet ride, soaking up bumps like they didn't exist. These were family cars for long road trips, Sunday drives, and effortless cruising. Fuel consumption was a small price to pay for luxury. How this affects the $10 challenge? Now, let's bring this back to our original question: how far can $10 of gas take you in a 1974 Mercury Marquis today? We already know that at best this car gets around 10 to 12 mpg on the highway. If you're driving in stop-and-go traffic, expect even worse numbers, closer to 7 or 8 mpg. At current gas prices, let's assume $10 buys you about 2.5 gallons of fuel. That means, on the highway, at an optimistic 12 mpg, you could travel about 30 miles before the tank runs dry. In city driving, with a lower 8 mpg estimate, you'd be lucky to go 20 miles. Just think about that for a second. $10 in a modern hybrid could take you nearly 200 miles. In a Mercury Marquis, you might not even make it across town. The psychological shift in how we see fuel economy, for anyone who grew up in the 1960s and 70s, this reality is almost hard to accept. Cars back then weren't judged by efficiency, they were statements of power and luxury. Owning a big car meant you had arrived, you had something special. People didn't want small, efficient cars because they lacked personality, presence, and that satisfying V8 rumble. But over time, as gas prices soared and automakers were forced to prioritize fuel economy, our mindset changed. Today, when shopping for a car, most people instinctively check the MPG rating before anything else. That would have been unthinkable in 1974. This shift in perception is why cars like the Mercury Marquis feel like relics today. They remind us of a time when fuel was abundant, power was celebrated, and efficiency was a secondary concern. But times have changed, and this $10 experiment proves just how much the cost of driving has evolved. To truly understand the shock factor behind this experiment, we need to take a step back and compare gas prices from 1974 to today. Prices at the pump have changed dramatically, but what's even more interesting is how that change has impacted the way we drive. In 1974, the average price of a gallon of gasoline in the U.S. was around 53 cents. In today's money, adjusting for inflation, that would be about $3.50 to $4 per gallon. But here's where things get complicated. Gas prices haven't just followed inflation. Gasoline is tied to the global oil market, government regulations, and supply and demand. Because of this, today's actual gas price is often much higher than what simple inflation would predict. In many states, gas is well over $4 per gallon, and in some areas it can even push past $5. What could $10 buy you in 1974? Now let's apply that to our experiment. If you walked into a gas station in 1974 with a $10 bill, you could fill up nearly 19 gallons of fuel. With the Mercury Marquis averaging 10 to 12 mpg on the highway, that would give you a driving range of around 200 to 230 miles. To put that into perspective, in 1974, $10 worth of gas could take you from Los Angeles to Las Vegas or from New York City to Washington, D.C. It was a time when driving a massive V8 sedan didn't feel like an expensive luxury, it was just normal. You could take long road trips without worrying about fuel costs, and even daily driving a car like the Mercury Marquis was perfectly reasonable. What can $10 buy you today? Fast forward to today, and the situation looks completely different. Depending on where you live, $10 will only get you around 2 to 3 gallons of gas. For the 1974 Mercury Marquis, this means at 12 mpg you'd get about 30 to 36 miles. At 8 mpg, you'd be lucky to go 20 to 24 miles. That's a massive difference. Instead of a long highway cruise, you'd barely make it across town. Why gas prices have risen beyond inflation? So why has gas gotten so much more expensive? The answer lies in a combination of factors, including oil supply and demand. The world's demand for oil has skyrocketed, while production has faced limitations due to political and economic factors. Government regulations. Many countries have introduced higher fuel taxes and environmental policies, increasing the price per gallon. Refining and distribution costs. Producing gasoline is more complex today due to stricter regulations, leading to higher production costs. Shifts in consumer behavior. More fuel-efficient cars mean people use less gas, which can reduce demand but also impact pricing strategies from oil companies. The result? Gas prices today aren't just higher because of inflation. They've risen due to fundamental changes in the way fuel is produced, regulated, and consumed. The real-world impact on classic car owners. For car enthusiasts who still own and drive big-block V8 classics, these price increases have changed everything. In the 1970s, it was common to use these cars as daily driver. Today, that's nearly impossible unless you're prepared for massive fuel bills. Owning a Mercury Marquis, Cadillac Eldorado, or Lincoln Continental today isn't just about driving, it's about preserving a piece of history. Most owners now drive their classic cars only on weekends or special occasions, store them in climate-controlled garages to maintain value, carefully budget for fuel costs, knowing that even a short drive will be expensive. This shift isn't just about money. It's about how our relationship with cars has changed. What was once a normal, everyday vehicle is now a rare, nostalgic treasure, the emotional attachment to the past. Despite rising fuel costs, car lovers still hold on to these classics. Why? Because cars like the Mercury Marquis represent more than just transportation. They bring back memories of childhood road trips with family. They remind us of an era when driving was about the experience, not just efficiency. They offer a feeling of power and presence that modern cars just can't replicate. For those who grew up in the 1960s and 70s, the sound of a big V8, the smoothness of a body-on-frame sedan, and the size of a car that feels like a rolling living room are things that today's fuel-efficient vehicles simply can't provide. This is why, despite the cost, people still love and restore these gas guzzlers. Because sometimes, driving isn't just about miles per gallon. It's about the feeling of being behind the wheel of something truly special. Owning a 1974 Mercury Marquis isn't just about getting from one place to another. It's about experiencing a kind of driving that simply doesn't exist anymore. From the moment you sit behind the wheel, everything feels different from modern cars. The first thing you notice is the sheer size of the car. At nearly 19 feet long, the Marquis is longer than most modern SUVs. It's a rolling piece of American luxury, built to glide effortlessly over the road rather than dart through traffic. Unlike today's lightweight aerodynamic vehicles, the Marquis was designed with heavy steel, thick chrome bumpers, and a body-on-frame construction that gives it a commanding presence. Turning the key brings the massive 7.5-liter V8 engine to life. This isn't the quiet, controlled hum of a modern fuel-efficient engine. It's a deep, throaty rumble that reminds you of the raw power sitting under the hood. Even at idle, you can feel the vibrations through the steering wheel, a subtle reminder that this car was built in an era when engine displacement mattered more than fuel efficiency. As you put it in drive and ease onto the road, you immediately notice the floating sensation. The suspension is tuned for comfort, not precision. Potholes, bumps, and rough pavement, the Marquis absorbs them like they barely exist. The power steering is so light that you can turn the wheel with a single finger, a far cry from the more responsive but stiffer steering of modern vehicles. On an open stretch of highway, the Mercury Marquis feels completely at home. The long wheelbase and soft suspension create a ride that is unbelievably smooth, almost like a luxury yacht gliding across calm waters. There's no rush, no urgency, just effortless cruising. How it compares to modern cars driving the Mercury Marquis today makes you realize just how much cars have changed in the last 50 years. Modern vehicles are designed for efficiency, safety, and precision, but they often lack the sense of occasion that classic cars provide. Fuel efficiency. A modern hybrid can travel 300 to 400 miles on a full tank, while the Marquis barely makes it past 200 miles, even when full. Handling. Today's cars are tighter, more responsive, and designed to hug corners. The Marquis, on the other hand, is a soft, slow-moving cruiser that prefers straight highways over winding roads. Safety. Modern vehicles have airbags, crash zones, and electronic stability control, while the Marquis relies on its sheer mass and steel construction to protect passengers. But here's the thing. For those who love classic cars, none of that matters. The Marquis isn't about efficiency, handling, or even safety. It's about nostalgia, character, and the feeling of driving something truly unique. The cost of driving a classic today, while the experience of driving a 1974 Mercury Marquis is unforgettable, The reality of owning and maintaining one in today's world comes with challenges. 1. Fuel costs. We've already covered how gas prices have skyrocketed since the 1970s, making it far more expensive to drive a classic car daily. But let's put that into perspective. If you drive 100 miles in a modern hybrid that gets 50 mpg, you'll use only 2 gallons of gas. In a Mercury Marquis that gets 10 mpg, you'll burn through 10 gallons for the same distance. At today's gas prices, that's easily $40 to $50 for just 100 miles. 2. Maintenance and repairs. Cars like the Mercury Marquis were built with simpler mechanical systems, but that doesn't mean they're cheap to maintain. Parts for classic cars aren't always easy to find, and when something does break, repairs can be expensive. A carburetor rebuild, that'll cost around $300 to $600 depending on the shop. A set of new whitewall tires? Easily over $1,000. Fuel system repairs? Expect to spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars keeping the engine running smoothly. Unlike modern cars that are packed with electronics, the Marquis relies on mechanical components, which means it needs regular tuning, carburetor adjustments, and careful upkeep. 3. Insurance costs. Classic cars aren't insured like modern vehicles. If you drive a Mercury Marquis daily, your insurance cost could be higher than expected. Many owners choose classic car insurance, which is often cheaper but comes with mileage limits. You can't just drive it like a normal car. It has to be treated as a collector's item. Why people still love these cars? With all these challenges, you might wonder, why do people still hold on to cars like the Mercury Marquis? The answer is simple. They represent a different time, a different way of driving, and a different philosophy about cars. For those who grew up in the 1960s and 70s, these cars bring back memories of road trips with family in the backseat, watching the world pass by through massive side windows, the sound of a powerful V8 humming smoothly at highway speeds, the feeling of sitting behind the wheel of something grand, elegant, and undeniably American. These cars weren't about getting from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. They were about enjoying the drive itself. Even today, when fuel efficiency dominates the conversation, when most cars are built for aerodynamics, safety, and low emissions, there's still a deep appreciation for vehicles that prioritized comfort, presence, and sheer road presence over everything else. Final thoughts. Driving a 1974 Mercury Marquis on just $10 worth of gas today is a stark reminder of how much the world has changed. What was once a normal, everyday vehicle is now a rolling time capsule, a reminder of an era when fuel was cheap, cars were massive, and the journey was just as important as the destination. Despite the cost, the maintenance, and the impracticality, there's something special about these cars that modern vehicles simply can't replicate. They don't just take you places, they take you back in time. There's a reason why people still feel attached to cars like the 1974 Mercury Marquis, even when modern vehicles outperform them in almost every measurable way. It's not just about horsepower, fuel economy, or convenience. It's about something deeper, a connection to the past, a sense of nostalgia, and the emotions tied to a time when cars were more than just machines. Psychologists call this nostalgic reinforcement, a phenomenon where memories associated with a specific time or object become even stronger as the years pass. For many people who grew up in the 1960s and 70s, these cars symbolize freedom, youth, and a world that felt simpler and more exciting. Think about it. How often do people reminisce about their first car? Not because it was the most reliable or efficient, but because of the experiences it gave them. The road trips, the late-night drives, the feeling of independence, that emotional imprint is what makes classic cars so special. Why bigger was better in the 1970s? The Mercury Marquis, along with other full-size American sedans, was built during a time when size, power, and presence mattered. The bigger the car, the more luxurious, safe, and prestigious it felt. It wasn't just about getting from point A to point B, it was about making a statement. Comfort was king. Soft, pillowy suspension, a cabin that felt like a living room on wheels, a driving experience that prioritized relaxation over everything else. Size meant safety. In an era before modern crash tests and airbags, the belief was simple. A bigger, heavier car meant more protection in an accident. Fuel wasn't a concern. Gas was cheap and efficiency wasn't even a discussion. The focus was on power, style, and smooth performance. Back then, a car like the Mercury Marquis wasn't considered excessive. It was considered the pinnacle of American automotive engineering. How driving a classic triggers the senses. Modern cars may have advanced technology, but they lack one thing: soul. A classic car engages all your senses in ways a modern vehicle never could. The sound, the deep low rumble of a big block V8.A sound that you can feel in your chest. New cars are designed to be quiet and controlled, but classics are about raw mechanical energy. The smell, the mix of aged leather, gasoline, and the slight scent of engine heat. It's a smell that instantly takes you back in time. The feel, the weight of the steering wheel, the way the car moves over the road, the solid click of metal switches instead of plastic buttons. It all feels more real. The visuals, the long, sculpted hood stretching out in front of you, the analog gauges with their sweeping needles, the chrome trim that catches the light just right. These are details modern cars simply don't have anymore. This is why, despite the high cost of fuel and maintenance, people still seek out and restore these cars. Because driving one is an experience, not just a routine. The shift in car culture over the decades. In the 1000s, 970s, cars were personal. People formed deep emotional bonds with them. They gave them names, washed them every Sunday, and spent weekends tuning and maintaining them. Owning a car wasn't just about transportation, it was a part of who you were. Today, things have changed. Cars are seen as appliances, leased for a few years, traded in for the next model, and designed to be as efficient as possible. Engines have become smaller, quieter, and less distinct. Touchscreens have replaced analog buttons and switches. Self-driving features are removing the human connection to driving. While modern cars are undeniably better in terms of reliability, safety, and efficiency, they lack the personality, the flaws, and the quirks that made older cars feel alive. This is why, despite all the advancements, classic cars are still so desirable. Because they remind us of a time when driving was about more than just getting somewhere. It was about the journey itself. Why some people will always prefer classic cars. Even with the rise of electric vehicles, automation, and efficiency, there will always be people who choose to drive and restore classics. Because for them, a car is not just about getting somewhere cheaply or efficiently. It's about the joy of working on a machine with your own hands, the satisfaction of driving something with character and history, the pride of preserving a piece of automotive heritage. Classic cars remind us that not everything has to be optimized for convenience. Some things are worth keeping just because they make us feel something. And in a world that's moving faster every day, that feeling is more valuable than ever. For those who have never driven a classic, it's easy to romanticize the experience. The long hood, the deep growl of a V8, the feeling of floating over the road, it all sounds perfect. But when you start treating a car like the 1974 Mercury Marquis as your daily driver, reality sets in fast. One of the biggest challenges? Fuel consumption. Modern cars are designed with fuel economy in mind. Even a powerful V8 in today's world is engineered with advanced fuel ejection, cylinder deactivation, and computer-controlled efficiency. But back in the 70s, the only way to get more power was to burn more fuel, and the Mercury Marquis, with its 7.5-liter, 460-cubic-inch V8, is one of the thirstiest sedans ever made. How much does it really cost to drive a classic like this? To truly understand the cost, let's break it down with real numbers. The 1974 Mercury Marquis gets around 8 to 10 miles per gallon. Compare that to a modern full-size sedan like a Toyota Camry, which gets 30 to 40 miles per gallon. Now, let's look at gas prices. At an average of $4 per gallon, which can be higher in places like California or Europe, here's how things add up. A modern sedan can travel 300 miles on a full 10-gallon tank. That's about $40 to fill up. The Mercury Marquis, on the other hand, would barely make it 100 miles on that same amount of gas. A full tank, holding around 25 gallons, would cost at least $100 just to go 250 miles. If you drive 1,000 miles per month, here's the difference in fuel cost. Modern car, around $135 to $150 per month. Mercury Marquis, at least $400 per month. And that's being generous. Now consider this. In the 1970s, gas was around 50 cents per gallon. That meant filling up a 25-gallon tank cost about $12.50. Today, the same fill-up could cost $100 or more. This is why classic cars are usually weekend cruisers, not daily commuters. The cost adds up fast, and that's before you factor in other expenses. The challenge of keeping a classic car on the road, driving a 50-year-old car daily, isn't just expensive, it's unpredictable. Unlike modern vehicles, which can go 1,000 miles with minimal maintenance, an old car requires constant attention. Parts wear out, hoses crack, and things just don't work as smoothly as they used to. Here are some of the biggest issues classic car owners face. 1. Finding replacement parts. In the 1970s, Ford, GM, and Chrysler were producing millions of cars per year. But half a century later, original parts are becoming rare. Need a new fuel pump? You might have to search through classic car forums, junkyards, or pay a premium for a reproduction part. Brake components, suspension bushings, or electrical parts? They're not sitting on the shelf at your local auto store. For many classic car owners, keeping their vehicles running means buying parts from private sellers, waiting weeks for delivery, or even fabricating custom pieces. 2 are reliability issues. A well-maintained Mercury Marquis can be a joy to drive, but make no mistake, these cars were not built for the kind of reliability we expect today. Cold starts in winter can be a nightmare. Unlike modern fuel-injected cars, old carbureted engines need time to warm up. A few minutes of idling, pumping the gas pedal, and hoping it doesn't stall. Overheating is a real concern. Cooling systems back then weren't designed for today's traffic conditions. Sitting in stop-and-go traffic in a classic car on a hot day? You better watch that temperature gauge. Electrical problems can be frustrating. Old wiring harnesses become brittle, connections corrode, and things like power windows, radio systems, and dashboard lights can stop working at any time. In short, driving a classic car every day requires patience, mechanical knowledge, and the willingness to deal with unexpected issues. The insurance problem. Another thing many people don't realize, insurance for classic cars is very different from regular cars. If you own a classic like the Mercury Marquis, you'll typically get classic car insurance, which offers cheaper rates but comes with restrictions, limited mileage. Many policies cap you at 5,000 miles per year, garage storage required. Most insurers won't cover your car if it's parked on the street. Driving restrictions. Some policies don't cover daily driving, only occasional use, parades, or car shows. If you want to insure it like a normal car, expect to pay a lot more, since older cars lack modern safety features. Why some owners accept the high cost despite the high gas prices, the frequent maintenance, and the challenges of finding parts? Some people still choose to daily drive classic cars. Why? Because to them a car isn't just about efficiency, it's about passion. They love the feeling of driving a piece of history. They enjoy the attention their car gets. A modern SUV might be more practical, but a 1974 Mercury Marquis turns heads everywhere it goes. They want to keep the old ways alive. The modern world is all about automation, touchscreens, and silent electric motors. Driving a classic car is a rebellion against that. It's not the easiest choice, but for many, it's the most rewarding. Final thoughts. The 1974 Mercury Marquis is a car from a different era, a time when fuel was cheap, comfort mattered more than efficiency, and the journey was just as important as the destination. But driving one today requires a different mindset. It's expensive, unpredictable, and impractical. Yet, for those who love classic cars, none of that matters. Because at the end of the day, they're not just driving, they're preserving a piece of history. Stepping into a 1974 Mercury Marquis is like entering a time capsule. The world outside might have moved on, but inside, everything feels frozen in the golden era of American luxury. The door swings open with a solid mechanical feel, heavy, sturdy, built to last. You don't just sit in this car, you sink into it. The seats aren't stiff or aggressively bolstered like in modern cars. Instead, they're wide, plush, and covered in thick, tufted upholstery that feels more like a living room sofa than a car seat. As you grip the thin, two-spoke steering wheel, you notice something instantly. It's big, and it has a light, almost effortless movement. Unlike modern electronic power steering, which feels artificially tight, the Marquis steering is pure hydraulics. It takes almost no effort to turn, making it feel floaty, disconnected, yet strangely satisfying. Starting up, the sound and feel of a classic V8 twisting. The ignition key isn't like pressing a modern push-buckle start. The engine cranks for a second before roaring to life, shaking the entire car ever so slightly. There's a deep throaty rumble that settles into a low, steady burble, a signature of the massive 7.5-liter V8 under the hood. The exhaust note isn't aggressive like modern performance cars. It's a slow, deliberate growl, one that whispers power instead of shouting it. A quick press on the gas pedal and you feel the entire car rock gently as the engine revs up. This is power you can feel, not just hear. Unlike today's cars, there are no driving modes, no sports settings, no electronic aids adjusting the throttle response. Everything is mechanical, raw, and real. Rolling down the road, the art of smooth cruising, sliding the gear selector into drive. You release the brake and the car effortlessly glides forward. There's no sudden jerk, no aggressive acceleration, just a smooth linear motion that feels like rolling on a cushion of air. On the open road, the Mercury Marquis isn't a car that begs to be driven hard. Instead, it's designed for effortless cruising. The suspension is incredibly soft, absorbing every bump and dip in the road with ease. You don't feel the road, you float over it. Acceleration is slow but smooth. Pressing the gas pedal doesn't snap your head back like a modern sports car. It's more of a gradual surge forward, like a powerful locomotive building momentum. The ride is eerily quiet. Modern cars use advanced soundproofing, but the Mercury achieves this with sheer size and weight. Outside noise just doesn't seem to exist. One thing that stands out? The length of the hood. Looking out over the long sculpted metal, you get the feeling of commanding a true road yacht. It's an experience modern cars simply can't replicate. Maneuvering a giant. The challenge of size and weight. While the Mercury Marquis is a dream on the highway, driving it in tight spaces is a different story. At over 18 feet long and nearly 7 feet wide, this car is bigger than some modern pickup trucks. Parking requires patience. There are no backup cameras, no parking sensors, just your instincts and a lot of careful maneuvering. Turning feels dramatic. With such a soft suspension, the car leans noticeably in corners, reminding you that this is a machine built for comfort, not agility. Braking needs planning. Unlike modern cars with powerful disc brakes and anti-lock systems, the Marquis has old-school drum brakes that require a firm press and extra stopping distance. Driving a car this big in today's traffic can feel intimidating, especially in crowded cities. But on the open highway where it was meant to be, it's pure magic. The unique driving rituals of classic car owners owning a classic like this means you don't just start the car and go. There are rituals, habits, and small adjustments that become second nature. You always check the fuel gauge. With fuel consumption this high, you don't want to get caught with an empty tank. You let the engine warm up properly. Unlike modern cars that are ready to go instantly, older V8s run better once they reach operating temperature. You learn to listen to the car. Modern cars have sensors to warn you about issues, but in a classic, your ears become the sensors. A slight rattle, a change in engine tone. These are things classic car owners learn to pick up on instinctively. Why driving a classic feels more connected in a modern car? Everything is designed to be easy, effortless, and automated. But in a classic like the Mercury Marquis, driving is a full-body experience. You feel the road through the steering wheel. You hear the engine in a way modern soundproofed cars won't allow. You smell the mix of gasoline, oil, and warm metal, reminding you that this is a living, breathing machine. Most modern vehicles remove the driver from the experience, but in a classic car, you are fully engaged. This is why, despite all the advancements in automotive technology, there's still nothing quite like the feeling of driving a classic American land yacht. If there's one thing people remember about 1970s American cars, it's their size. And with size comes weight. Nearly 5,000 pounds in the case of the 1974 Mercury. That weight, paired with the massive 460 cubic inch V8, means fuel efficiency was never its strong suit. But how bad is it really? Today, with fuel prices higher than ever, how far could you actually go on just $10 worth of gas? To answer that, we need to break it down. Understanding the official mileage ratings, when new, the 1974 Mercury Marquis had an EPA estimated fuel economy of around 8 to 10 miles per gallon in the city and 11 to 13 mpg on the highway. But those numbers came from an era when fuel economy testing was far less strict than today. Back then, the testing procedures weren't as precise, and they didn't account for things like modern traffic patterns, aggressive acceleration, or long idle times. So, in reality, a well-maintained Marquis today might get around 8 mpg in mixed driving, and in city traffic, that number could drop as low as 6 mpg. Calculating the distance on $10 worth of gas now, let's bring in real-world prices. Gasoline prices fluctuate, but for this calculation, let's assume the price per gallon is around $4, a fair estimate for many places in the US, Canada, and parts of Europe. $10 worth of gas at $4 per gallon gives us 2.5 gallons. At 8 mpg, that means 2.5 gallons would take us about 20 miles. Yes, just 20 miles on $10. A distance that many modern hybrids could cover using less than a single gallon. What happens under different driving conditions? But that's not the full story. The way you drive makes a huge difference in a classic car. City driving with stop-and-go traffic is the worst-case scenario. Every time you accelerate from a stop, that massive V8 gulps down fuel like a thirsty giant. If you're caught in traffic, you could see as little as 15 miles on $10 worth of gas. Highway cruising is more efficient. Once you get up to speed and maintain a steady throttle, the engine works less and fuel economy improves. On a long, uninterrupted highway drive, you might stretch it closer to 25 miles. Coasting and smooth acceleration can help. In a car like this, aggressive driving burns fuel fast, but easing onto the throttle and coasting whenever possible helps extend the range. Why classic V8s consume so much fuel? Modern cars have computer-controlled fuel injection, turbochargers, and lightweight materials to maximize efficiency. But back in 1974, things were different. Carbureted engines aren't precise. Unlike today's fuel-injected engines, carburetors dump fuel based on mechanical settings, not real-time adjustments. This means more fuel gets used than necessary. Engine displacement is massive. The 460 cubic inch, 7.5-liter V8 is one of the biggest engines ever put in a passenger car. The sheer amount of fuel required to keep it running is staggering. Weight and aerodynamics work against it. The Marquis is not only heavy, but also shaped like a brick. Modern cars are designed to slip through the air efficiently, but the Marquis pushes air aside like a freight train, requiring even more power to maintain speed. How owners of classic cars adapt to high fuel costs. Owning a classic car like the Mercury Marquis today means adapting to a world where gas prices are significantly higher than they were in the 1970s. Here's how many classic car owners deal with the reality of poor fuel economy. They drive sparingly. Most classic car enthusiasts take their vehicles out on weekends or for special occasions, not as daily drivers. They plan their routes, avoiding stop-and-go traffic and choosing roads with steady speeds can make a difference. They keep the car well maintained. A properly tuned carburetor, fresh spark plugs, and clean filters can improve mileage slightly. They sometimes modify their cars. Some owners install modern fuel injection systems or overdrive transmissions to increase efficiency, though purists prefer to keep things original. How it compares to other cars of its time? The 1974 Mercury Marquis wasn't alone in its thirst for fuel. Nearly all full-size American cars of the era had similar or worse fuel consumption. A 1974 Cadillac Fleetwood Brougham, powered by a 500 cubic inch, 8.2-liter V8, had an even worse 6 to 8 mpg in the city. A 1974 Lincoln Continental Mark IV, another luxury heavyweight, had mileage similar to the Marquis, averaging 7 to 9 mpg. Even smaller muscle cars like the Pontiac Trans Am with its 455 cubic inch V8 struggled to break 10 mpg in real-world driving. Would it have been a problem back then? Surprisingly, fuel economy wasn't a major concern in the early 70s. Gasoline was still cheap, around $0.50 per gallon in 1974. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $3 per gallon today, which is still lower than many current fuel prices. However, everything changed in late 1973 with the OPEC oil crisis, which caused fuel prices to skyrocket. Suddenly, cars like the Mercury Marquis went from being symbols of luxury to expensive gas guzzlers. This is one reason why, by the late 1970s, downsizing became inevitable. By the early 80s, even full-size American cars had started shrinking, using smaller engines and lighter materials to improve efficiency. The real question, is it worth it? At the end of the day, driving a 1974 Mercury Marquis on $10 of gas is not about efficiency. It's about the experience. It's about the smooth, effortless ride. It's about the deep, rolling sound of a classic V8. It's about reliving an era when cars were built like rolling pieces of art. Yes, you won't get far on $10 of gas, but the miles you do drive will feel like stepping back in time. And for many classic car enthusiasts, that's worth every drop of fuel. Imagine pulling up to the gas station with a 1974 Mercury Marquis, its long, imposing body gleaming under the sunlight. You step out, lift the massive fuel cap, and start pumping gas. The needle barely moves after $10 worth of fuel. For many modern drivers, this seems unthinkable. But for those who appreciate classic American luxury, this is just part of the experience. With fuel economy that hovers around 8 miles per gallon, the Marquis isn't just a car, it's a statement. A machine from an era where size, power, and comfort were prioritized over efficiency. But in today's world of hybrid technology and rising gas prices, what does it really mean to drive one? The cost of driving a 1974 Mercury Marquis daily. Let's take a practical look at what it would cost to drive this car regularly. Assume an average driver covers 1,000 miles per month. With an estimated fuel efficiency of 8 mpg, the Marquis would need 125 gallons of fuel per month. Now, if fuel costs $4 per gallon, that's a monthly fuel bill of $500 just for gasoline alone. Compare that to a modern hybrid that gets 50 mpg. That same 1,000-mile drive would require only 20 gallons of fuel, costing just $80 per month. That's a staggering difference. $500 versus $80? This explains why few people drive these classics daily anymore. The cost isn't just in fuel, but in maintenance, parts, and upkeep. Mechanical wear and maintenance challenges. Driving a nearly 50-year-old car comes with another challenge: mechanical reliability. Unlike modern cars with advanced fuel injection and electronic ignition, the Mercury Marquis relies on old-school engineering, carburetor tuning. A classic carburetor isn't as efficient as modern fuel injection. If not properly tuned, it can waste fuel, run too rich, or flood the engine. Regular adjustments are needed to keep the car running smoothly. Spark plugs and ignition system. Older ignition systems rely on distributor points rather than electronic ignition. Over time, these components wear out and need frequent servicing. Vacuum leaks. Many systems in classic cars depend on vacuum lines, including power brakes and automatic transmissions. A small leak can cause poor performance and lower fuel economy. Keeping a classic luxury sedan like the Marquis running in top shape requires both time and money. It's a labor of love, something modern car owners rarely think about. The experience. Why people still drive these cars despite all these challenges. There's something special about driving a car like the Mercury Marquis. The moment you sit inside, you feel like you're floating on a cloud. The suspension is soft, absorbing bumps effortlessly. The seats are wide and plush, almost like sitting on a living room sofa. Then you start the engine. The deep rumble of the 460 V8 is unmistakable. It's not a high-revving performance engine. It's a smooth, effortless powerhouse that makes highway cruising feel majestic. There's no touchscreen, no beeping sensors, no lane assist. Just a classic dashboard with simple gauges, a large steering wheel, and a ride experience that no modern car can replicate. This is what makes these cars worth keeping alive. Us guzzlers and the changing automotive landscape. Back in 1974, fuel efficiency wasn't a priority. Gas was cheap, and large V8-powered sedans were the standard choice for American families. But then came the 1973 oil crisis, an event that changed everything. Suddenly, gas prices doubled overnight. People began questioning whether cars like the Mercury Marquis made sense anymore. By the 1980s, downsizing became the new trend. Engines got smaller, cars became lighter, and fuel efficiency became a major selling point. Fast forward to today, and we see an entirely different world. Hybrids, electric vehicles, and turbocharged engines dominate the market. A car that gets less than 10 mpg is almost unheard of. Yet, despite all of this, classic gas guzzlers still hold a special place in the hearts of enthusiasts. How classic car owners adapt to the modern world. For those who still own and drive these large luxury sedans, adaptation is key. Some owners have found creative ways to make their cars more fuel efficient. Installing overdrive transmissions to lower engine RPM on the highway, upgrading to modern carburetors or EFI conversion kits for better fuel metering, using premium fuel with better additives to keep the engine running cleaner, replacing old mechanical fans with electric ones to reduce engine strain. Even small changes can help extend the range on a full tank. But for most classic car lovers, fuel efficiency isn't the goal. It's about keeping history alive. Why some people will never give up their classics. Ask any classic car owner why they still drive a Mercury Marquis, and the answer won't be about fuel economy. It won't be about practicality. It will be about nostalgia, about preserving a time when cars were designed to glide down the highway effortlessly, not just get from point A to point B. For many, these cars represent an era when automobiles were works of art, when chrome, steel, and real wood trim were normal, and when a car wasn't just a machine, it was a statement. So while the 1974 Mercury Marquis may not get far on $10 of gas, the memories it creates, those are priceless. Owning a 1974 Mercury Marquis isn't just about pumping fuel into a massive tank. It's about understanding the true cost of keeping such a machine alive. The price tag of fuel is only the beginning. There are deeper expenses that come with driving a nearly 50-year-old luxury sedan. For most people today, car ownership is about efficiency, reliability, and practicality. But for those who still drive classics, it's a different world. It's not just about getting from point A to B. It's about maintaining a piece of history, and that comes with its own challenges. Insurance, a unique challenge for classic cars. Unlike modern vehicles, classic cars don't fit neatly into the standard insurance system. Regular insurance policies assume daily use, but most classic owners drive their cars occasionally, not every. Standard policies. If insured like a modern car, a classic like the Mercury Marquis would cost a fortune to cover, especially given its V8 engine, high displacement, and low fuel efficiency. Insurance companies classify it as a high-risk vehicle, which means higher premiums. Classic car insurance. A more affordable option is classic car insurance, which limits annual mileage but provides better coverage at a lower cost. The downside? You can't drive it as freely as a daily vehicle. Insurance is a constant expense, even if the car sits in a garage. Whether driving it or not, the price of keeping it legally on the road is another hidden cost many don't consider. Repairs and parts availability. A growing problem. One of the biggest challenges of owning an old American luxury sedan is finding parts. The 1974 Mercury Marquis wasn't a rare car in its time, but decades later, original components are becoming harder to find. Engine components, basic parts like spark plugs, belts, and filters are still available, but carburetor rebuild kits, distributor points, and original exhaust manifolds are becoming rare. Body panels and trim. Unlike modern cars with mass-produced plastic bumpers, classics have chrome, steel, and intricate designs. If a fender gets damaged, finding a replacement can take months or even require custom fabrication. Interior pieces, dashboard components, upholstery, and original wood grain panels, many are no longer made. Restoring the interior to factory specs requires searching salvage yards, online auctions, or paying high prices for reproduction parts. This is where classic car ownership becomes less about driving and more about problem solving. Each repair is a journey in itself, requiring patience, research, and often a bigger wallet than expected. Oil, fluids, and regular maintenance, not like modern cars. Unlike today's synthetic oil and long-lasting fluids, a classic V8 engine requires constant attention. These cars were built at a time when regular maintenance was expected, not optional. Oil changes. A modern car can go 5,000 to 7,500 miles before needing an oil change. But the Marquis? Every 2,000 to 3,000 miles is recommended due to older engine designs and higher fuel dilution. Transmission fluid. A 50-year-old C6 automatic transmission needs careful monitoring. Leaks are common, and the fluid must be changed more frequently than in modern transmissions. Brake system. The power-assisted drum brakes in older Mercurys work differently than today's disc brakes. Brake fluid absorbs moisture over time, leading to soft pedals and reduced braking power. Regular flushes are necessary. Skipping regular maintenance on a classic isn't an option. Unlike modern cars that can go years without service, an old luxury sedan needs constant attention to stay roadworthy. Fuel efficiency. More than just the miles per gallon. We've already established that the 1,974 Mercury Marquis gets about 8 miles per gallon, but that's only part of the fuel economy equation. The way fuel is burned inside the massive 460 cubic inch V8 is fundamentally different from today's engines. Modern cars use precise fuel injection, but the Marquis relies on a simple carburetor, which isn't as efficient. Cold starts waste fuel. Unlike modern engines which start and optimize fuel instantly, a carbureted engine runs rich until it warms up. This means every cold start burns more gas. Idling burns excess fuel. A modern car at a red light barely uses any fuel, but a big block V8, it still gulps gas even when standing still. Acceleration is thirsty. Pressing the accelerator in a fuel-injected car is calculated and efficient. In a carbureted V8, it's raw fuel delivery, more power but more waste. This is why the real-world fuel economy of a Mercury Marquis can be even worse than expected. City driving, stop-and-go traffic, and cold starts can drop the MPG even lower. Tire costs. The hidden expense of large sedans. Another unexpected cost, tires. A modern compact car might need 15-inch wheels, but the Marquis came with 15-inch or even 16-inch tires, designed to handle its weight and size. Tires designed to handle its weight and size, white wall tires. Many owners prefer period-correct white wall tires, which are more expensive than standard black walls. Soft riding compound. Luxury sedans of this era were built for a smooth, quiet ride, which means the tires have a softer compound, leading to faster wear. Balancing and alignment. With a long wheelbase and heavy frame, a classic sedan needs frequent alignment checks to avoid uneven tire wear. Replacing all 4 tires on a Mercury Marquis can be twice as expensive as on a compact car. And since these cars aren't light, tires wear out faster than expected. Why people still love driving these cars despite all the costs, maintenance, and fuel consumption, there's one undeniable truth. Driving a 1,974 Mercury Marquis is an experience like no other. The power, the deep rumble of the 460 V8 is something modern cars just don't have. It's a sound that reminds you of an era when engine displacement was king. The comfort. Modern cars focus on efficiency and aerodynamics, but classics focused on luxury and ride quality. The Marquis was built to glide effortlessly, making even rough roads feel smooth. The nostalgia. For many, driving a car like this is about more than just transportation. It's about revisiting the past. It's about remembering a time when cars were works of art, not just machines. This is why, even in an era of electric vehicles and hybrids, the Mercury Marquis still has a place on the road. It may not be practical, it may not be efficient, but it represents something timeless. And for those who truly appreciate classic American luxury, that's worth every drop of fuel. Owning a 1,974 Mercury Marquis is one thing, but driving it? That's a completely different experience. It's not just about pressing the gas and steering the wheel, it's about stepping into a different era of automotive history. The moment you settle into the plush, overstuffed bench seat, you realize this is no ordinary car. Modern vehicles focus on sporty bucket seats and stiff suspension, but the Marquis was built for unparalleled comfort. The thick carpeting, the chrome accents, and the wood-grain dash create an atmosphere of pure 1,970s luxury. It's a car that doesn't rush you. It invites you to enjoy the ride. The key turns in the ignition, and instead of the silent hum of modern engines, you're greeted by the deep, authoritative rumble of a 460 cubic inch V8. It's a sound that commands attention, a reminder of an era when power and presence mattered more than efficiency. With a gentle press of the gas pedal, the engine responds with a smooth surge of torque, effortlessly pushing the 2-ton machine forward. The art of handling a land yacht driving a Mercury Marquis isn't like driving a modern sedan. It's big, heavy, and incredibly smooth, but it requires a different level of skill and awareness. The first thing you notice is the steering. Unlike today's tight, responsive electronic power steering, the Marquis features an old-school hydraulic system, light as a feather but with a noticeable delay. It's a sensation that feels almost disconnected, as if the front wheels are floating ahead of you rather than responding instantly to your inputs. At low speeds, turning the wheel is effortless, but once you're moving, it takes some careful planning. The car's long wheelbase and soft suspension make it feel like a boat on the highway. It doesn't dart into corners, it glides. Every curve requires patience, and every maneuver needs an extra second of thought. Parking? That's a challenge of its own. The Marquis stretches over 19 feet in length, making modern parking spaces feel tiny in comparison. You don't just pull into a spot. You carefully guide the massive frame into place, often needing a few extra adjustments to get it just right. But once you're out on the open road, everything changes. Highway cruising, where the Mercury feels at home. If there's one place where the Mercury Marquis truly shines, it's the wide open highway. At speeds of 55 to 70 miles per hour, this car transforms into a luxury cruiser unlike anything modern vehicles can offer. The soft, pillow-like suspension absorbs every bump, making rough roads feel like freshly paved asphalt. There's no harshness, no unnecessary stiffness, just pure, effortless comfort. You're not just driving, you're floating. The big block V8 hums at a relaxed 2,000 RPM, barely exerting itself. Unlike small modern engines that need to work hard at highway speeds, the 460 cubic inch monster has effortless power on tap. A slight press of the accelerator sends you gliding past slower cars, with no downshifting, no hesitation. Just a smooth surge forward. Wind noise? Practically non-existent. The thick glass, heavy doors, and massive insulation keep the cabin surprisingly quiet. The world outside fades away, leaving only the faint burble of the engine and the rhythmic sound of tires rolling along the pavement. For those who remember the golden age of American highways, this is what road trips used to feel like, a relaxing, unhurried journey rather than a stressful rush to the destination. The fuel reality hits hard, but with all this comfort comes a harsh reality. As the miles roll by, so does the fuel gauge. Unlike modern cars with precise digital readouts, the Mercury Marquis uses a classic analog needle, and watching it steadily drop is a sobering experience. With a 25-gallon fuel tank and an average of 8 miles per gallon, it doesn't take long before you realize just how much gas this car consumes. City driving, stop-and-go traffic can push fuel consumption down to 6 miles per gallon or worse. Every time you hit a red light, you can almost feel the fuel burning away. Highway driving, at a steady 55 to 60 mph, fuel efficiency improves slightly, maybe 9 to 10 mpg if conditions are perfect. But if you push it past 70 mph, expect that number to drop again. Refueling costs. With gas prices fluctuating, a full tank can easily exceed $100. And with fuel economy this low, you'll be refueling often. Owning a Mercury Marquis means accepting the trade-off. You don't drive it because it's economical. You drive it because it's an experience. Braking, slowing down, a 2-ton giant. One of the most surprising things about driving a classic luxury car is just how different the braking feels. Today's cars have high-performance disc brakes, ABS, and electronic stability systems, making stopping almost effortless. But in 1974, brakes were an entirely different story. The Mercury Marquis came with front disc brakes and rear drum brakes, a system that was considered advanced for its time, but by today's standards it feels unpredictable. Soft brake pedal. Unlike modern cars with firm, responsive brake pedals, the Marquis has a soft, gradual feel. It doesn't stop instantly, it takes its time. Long stopping distance. With so much weight and old-school braking technology, stopping from high speeds requires careful planning. You can't slam on the brakes. You ease into them to avoid unsettling the car. Brake fade. After repeated braking, especially on long downhill stretches, the brakes can become less effective. Modern cars compensate for this, but older brake systems require skill and caution. For those used to driving classic cars, this is second nature. But for someone coming from a modern vehicle, it can be a shock. The key to driving a land yacht isn't just knowing how to accelerate, it's knowing how to stop. The timeless appeal of the Mercury Marquis. Despite all the quirks, all the fuel costs, and all the challenges of handling a car this size, there's a reason why people still love driving full-size American classics. It's not about performance numbers, quarter-mile times, or high-tech features. It's about the feeling. The sense of commanding a machine that was built in a time when cars were designed to be bold, luxurious, and unforgettable. It's about nostalgia. It's about remembering road trips with family, lazy Sunday drives, and the unmistakable smell of an old V8 warming up on a cold morning. For those who love these cars, it's not about the miles per gallon, it's about the memories per mile. And the 460 cubic inch V8 under the hood of the 1974 Mercury Marquis isn't just an engine, it's a statement. A statement from a time when American cars weren't built to meet fuel economy standards or strict emission regulations. They were built for power, presence, and effortless cruising. Turning the key isn't just starting the car, it's waking up a sleeping giant. The deep, throaty rumble isn't just noise, it's the sound of pure displacement. This engine doesn't rely on turbochargers, direct injection, or computerized fuel management. Instead, it's old-school raw power, fed through a massive 4-barrel carburetor. At full throttle, the 460 V8 produces 220 horsepower and a monstrous 355 lp-f. By today's standards, those numbers don't seem impressive, but what makes this engine truly special isn't just the peak power, it's how it delivers it. The torque comes in low and steady, pushing the car forward with effortless authority. Unlike modern engines that need to rev high to make power, the big block V8 delivers its muscle instantly. The driving feel, power without struggle. Pressing the gas pedal doesn't create a sudden burst of acceleration like in today's turbocharged car. Instead, it's a smooth, steady surge. The long-stroke engine was designed for relaxed highway cruising, not aggressive performance. It doesn't beg you to race, it invites you to enjoy the drive. At low speeds, the car moves with a certain graceful heaviness. The soft throttle response makes every movement feel deliberate rather than rushed. But as soon as you get out on an open stretch of road, that's when you feel the true magic of the 460. With just a slight press of the pedal, the Marquis builds speed without effort. The transmission shifts are barely noticeable, and the big V8 never feels like it's struggling. On a wide highway, it can cruise at 70 miles per hour with the engine barely breaking a sweat. There's no need to downshift. There's no hesitation. It's smooth, confident, and relaxed. The transmission, the heart of the smooth ride. The Mercury Marquis comes equipped with the Ford C6 3-speed automatic transmission. Today, cars have 8, 9, or even 10-speed transmissions designed for efficiency, but in the 1970s, 3 gears were all you needed. The C6 transmission was one of the most durable and reliable automatic gearboxes Ford ever built. It was designed to handle the immense torque of big block engines without sacrificing smoothness. And that's exactly what it does. First gear gets the car moving effortlessly, using the torque of the 460 V8 to pull its massive weight without needing high RPMs. Second gear keeps the acceleration steady and smooth, eliminating the need for aggressive downshifting. Third gear is where the magic happens. Once the car is up to speed, it glides effortlessly with the engine running at a relaxed pace. Unlike modern transmissions that constantly hunt for the right gear, the C6 stays steady. It doesn't shift unless it has to, making the driving experience incredibly smooth. There's no hesitation, no delay, just a continuous, buttery ride. And when you press the gas, instead of a sudden downshift, the big V8 simply pulls harder. There's no rush, no urgency, just pure, effortless motion. The sound of the 460 V8, a symphony of power. Modern cars are engineered to be quiet and refined. Cabin insulation, turbochargers, and digital exhaust management all work together to minimize engine noise. But in a 1974 Mercury Marquis, the engine is part of the experience. At idle, the 460 V8 produces a deep, rhythmic rumble. It's not obnoxious, not aggressive, just a calm, confident growl that reminds you this is a serious machine. At low speeds, it hums smoothly, almost like a well-tuned orchestra. It's present, but never overwhelming. But the real magic happens when you step on the gas. The deep growl turns into a rich, throaty roar as the 4-barrel carburetor opens up, feeding the massive engine a surge of fuel. Unlike modern cars, where acceleration is met with a computerized, artificial sound, this is real, raw power. It's a sound that takes you back. A sound that older car lovers remember from their youth. A sound that modern cars just can't replicate. Fuel consumption, the price of power. Of course, all this power comes at a cost. The 460 V8 was built for performance and smoothness, not efficiency. At highway speeds, it delivers around 9 to 10 miles per gallon. In the city, that number drops to 6 or even 5 miles per gallon. But for those who own a car like this, fuel economy isn't the priority. It's about the experience, the feel of the road, the connection to an era when cars were built to be bold, comfortable, and powerful. The unique appeal of driving a classic, driving a 1974 Mercury Marquis, is more than just transportation. It's time travel. It's the feel of a real steering wheel made of thick, solid materials. It's the weight of the chrome-trimmed door closing with a satisfying thud. It's the smell of the old leather and aged fabric, soaked in decades of history. It's about remembering what cars used to be, when they weren't just about efficiency and technology, but about presence, comfort, and personality. For those who grew up in the 1960s and 70s, cars like this bring back memories. Memories of family road trips, lazy weekend drives, and the golden age of American highways. And that's why cars like the Mercury Marquis still matter today, because they remind us of a time when driving was an experience, not just a necessity. Driving a 1974 Mercury Marquis isn't just about power, it's about comfort. This was an era when American cars were designed to glide over the road, not feel every bump. The Marquis delivers a ride so smooth and effortless that it feels less like driving and more like floating. The secret lies in its body-on-frame construction, soft suspension, and massive wheelbase. At 224 inches long, this is one of the biggest sedans ever made. That extra length spreads out road impacts, reducing the sharp jolts and vibrations you'd feel in smaller cars. Combine that with the coil spring suspension at all four corners, and you get a car that absorbs imperfections like a sponge. Every pothole, every crack in the pavement, they disappear. The car moves with a calm, unshaken grace, as if the road itself is being paved in real time beneath its tires. Unlike modern cars with sport-tuned suspensions which prioritize handling, the Marquis was built for effortless cruising. The steering? Feather light. With a recirculating ball steering system, you don't have to wrestle with the wheel. A gentle turn sends the car gliding in the desired direction, like a yacht changing course on open water. A cabin designed for relaxation? Step inside the Mercury Marquis, and you're not just getting into a car, you're stepping into a living room on wheels. Everything about the interior was designed for maximum comfort. The front bench seat isn't just wide, it's a sofa on wheels. Soft padding, thick upholstery, and enough room to seat 3 adults comfortably. The rear seats? Just as plush, offering luxury-level legroom even by today's standards. And then, there's the ride silence. The cabin of a 1974 Marquis is a sanctuary from the outside world. Thick insulation, double-sealed doors, and a heavy steel body act like a soundproof room. Even at highway speeds, the cabin remains quiet, peaceful, and relaxing. The dashboard is simple but elegant. No overwhelming digital screens, no complex menus, just easy-to-read dials and gauges. The speedometer, fuel gauge, and temperature gauge are all housed in a clean rectangular layout. And right in the center, a classic AM/FM radio with chrome knobs, ready to play your favorite oldies station. And let's not forget the climate control. Unlike modern cars with touchscreens and endless settings, the Marquis keeps it simple. A single slider controls the heat and air conditioning, sending a steady stream of perfectly regulated air throughout the massive cabin. This isn't a car for rushing. It's a car for taking your time, for sinking into the seat, resting your arm on the wide padded door panel, and letting the road unfold ahead of you. The feeling of driving something special, owning a 1974 Mercury Marquis, isn't just about transportation. It's about owning a piece of history. Cars like this were built during a time when driving was an experience, when highways were wide, open, and built for cruising, when gas stations didn't have digital pumps, but instead had attendants who'd fill your tank, clean your windshield, and check your oil. Driving this car today is like bringing that era back to life. Every time you turn the ignition key, you hear the deep roar of the V8, a sound that transports you straight to the 1970s. The long hood stretches out in front of you like the deck of an old luxury yacht. The speedometer needle moves at a steady, deliberate pace, never rushing, never hurrying, just gliding forward with dignity. You don't need to floor the gas pedal. You don't need to push the limits. This car wasn't built for that. It was built for enjoyment. And that's exactly what it delivers. A car that commands respect. There's something about a classic American sedan that still turns heads today. Maybe it's the sheer size. Maybe it's the presence, the long sculpted lines, the massive chrome grille, the bold stance. Or maybe it's because cars like this are rare sights on the road now. People notice. At a gas station, strangers walk up just to say, "I haven't seen one of these in years." At stoplights, other drivers give a respectful nod. In parking lots, people take a second glance, admiring the car's timeless elegance. And the best part? When you step out of a car like this, you don't just feel like you drove somewhere, you feel like you arrived. Because in a 1974 Mercury Marquis, you don't just travel from point A to point B, you make an entrance. Driving a 1974 Mercury Marquis isn't about urgency, it's about grace, comfort, and presence. The road feels different in a car like this. It's not a stretch of pavement filled with impatient drivers and endless stop-and-go traffic. Instead, it becomes a smooth ribbon of opportunity, unfolding effortlessly before you. The moment you settle into the wide, cushioned driver's seat, the sense of control is different from modern cars. There's no aggressive sport mode, no tight suspension pulling you into every turn. Instead, there's a serene confidence, a feeling that this machine was built to glide, not dart. The large, thin-rimmed steering wheel responds with an easy grace. No sudden jerks, no twitchy overcorrections. The car follows your inputs with a kind of steady, deliberate motion that reminds you of a well-trained racehorse. Powerful, but composed. Commanding, yet smooth. And then there's the acceleration. It's not about quick bursts of speed. The 460 cubic inch V8 delivers its power progressively, steadily, effortlessly. Pressing the gas pedal isn't about getting pinned to your seat. It's about watching the world outside start to move past you at the perfect pace. Not too fast, not too slow, but just right. Why size still matters in today's world of compact crossovers and small turbocharged engines. It's easy to forget what a full-size sedan feels like. Cars like the Mercury Marquis were built when bigger was better. At nearly 19 feet long, the Marquis doesn't just occupy space, it owns it. Parking lots feel tighter, city streets feel narrower, but on the open road, the car finally stretches its legs. The weight distribution is near perfect for cruising. At around 4,700 pounds, the mass of the car works in your favor, creating a ride that feels planted and secure. Small road imperfections disappear beneath the frame, and even at highway speeds, the car maintains a solid, unwavering presence. This isn't just a relic of the past, it's a reminder of what true highway cars used to be, spacious, smooth, and built for the long haul. The soundtrack of the drive-in modern cars, road noise is something you get used to. Wind whistling, tires humming, and the constant whir of the engine fighting for efficiency. But in the Mercury Marquis, the only sound that matters is the one coming from under the hood. The 460 V8 doesn't roar. It doesn't scream. It rumbles, a low, steady hum that sits in the background, like a favorite old song. You don't hear it as much as feel it, gently resonating through the cabin. It's the kind of sound that reminds you of long summer road trips, of highways stretching endlessly into the horizon, of simpler times when driving was more than just a commute. It was an experience. And when you do decide to press the gas pedal, the engine responds with a deep, authoritative growl. Not aggressive, not frantic, just pure mechanical honesty. It's a reminder that this car, despite its smooth demeanor, still has a heart of steel and power. Gas mileage? Who cares? It's no secret that a car like this isn't winning any fuel economy awards. But here's the thing, it was never meant to. A 1974 Mercury Marquis doesn't sip fuel, and it certainly doesn't apologize for it. The 460 V8 was built for strength, longevity, and effortless torque. At around 10 to 12 miles per gallon, it's easy to see why gas prices of the 1970S made cars like this less practical over time. But back then, nobody was thinking about miles per gallon. They were thinking about miles per memory. Because when you're behind the wheel of a car like this, fuel consumption isn't the first thing on your mind. What matters is the way the car makes you feel. It's about cruising through town, feeling like you own the road. It's about taking the scenic route just because it feels right. It's about pressing the pedal a little harder, just to hear that V8 remind you that power isn't a number, it's a sensation. And honestly, that's worth every drop of gas. A legacy that lives on the Mercury Marquis may not be as common on the roads today, but for those who remember, it still represents something special. It was a car for people who valued space, comfort, and effortless power. A car that didn't rush, didn't fight for attention. It simply existed in its own class. Even now, when one of these cars rolls down the street, people stop and take notice. It's not just a machine, it's a time capsule. A rolling reminder of an era when driving was about more than just getting somewhere. It was about enjoying the journey. And that's exactly what a 1974 Mercury Marquis delivers. Not just a drive, but an experience. There's something about a 1974 Mercury Marquis that commands attention. It doesn't need flashy colors or aggressive styling to stand out. Its sheer size, smooth lines, and unmistakable presence do all the talking. Pulling up to a stoplight, you can feel the difference. Modern cars, with their compact frames and aerodynamic angles, suddenly look small, almost fragile, next to the Marquis. It's not just a car, it's a statement of an era. The long, sweeping hood stretches out in front of you, giving you the kind of road visibility that modern cars simply can't match. The chrome accents, the hidden headlamps, and the elegant grille all remind you that this was a time when cars weren't just transportation, they were designed to be admired. But what really sets the Marquis apart isn't just how it looks, it's how it moves. Unlike the stiff, over-engineered feel of today's vehicles, the Marquis glides. The suspension soaks up bumps with an ease that makes the road feel like a freshly paved highway, no matter where you're driving. And then there's the weight. You can feel it in the way the car handles, deliberate, confident, unshaken. It's not about sharp turns or aggressive maneuvers. It's about smooth, predictable control. A car built for comfort, yet still undeniably powerful. Built for the open road, while modern cars boast about their autonomous driving and high-tech features, the 1974 Mercury Marquis offers something far more valuable: a connection to the road. This is a car designed for long, uninterrupted stretches of highway, the kind of roads where the horizon stretches endlessly ahead, and the only thing that matters is the gentle hum of the 460 V8 as it carries you forward. At highway speeds, the Marquis feels effortless. No unnecessary engine noise, no sudden downshifts, no twitchy steering corrections, just a steady, composed ride that makes every mile feel like a moment to be enjoyed. The cabin remains quiet, even as the world rushes past outside. Unlike modern cars, where road noise and tire hum become part of the experience, the Mercury Marquis cocoons you in silence, a space where the only sound you hear is the deep, steady rhythm of the engine, a heartbeat of American engineering. It's not about rushing, it's about savoring the drive, feeling the weight of history in your hands, knowing that each mile covered is a moment spent in a car that was built to be enjoyed, not just used. Comfort beyond compare. Step inside and you'll quickly realize why this car was once the choice of executives, families, and road trip enthusiasts alike. The interior isn't just spacious, it's expansive. The bench seats, wrapped in soft, tufted upholstery, feel more like a living room sofa than a car seat. There's no cramped legroom, no squeezing into a tight space. Just pure, unfiltered comfort. Even the dashboard is designed with ease in mind. Unlike today's overwhelming touchscreens and complicated controls, the Marquis keeps it simple. Clear dials, easy-to-reach switches, and a design that prioritizes function over flash. The ride itself is a testament to the engineering of the era. With its soft, float-like suspension, the Marquis absorbs imperfections in the road without a second thought. Speed bumps, potholes, uneven pavements, you barely feel them. And while today's luxury cars advertise adaptive suspension and custom drive modes, the Marquis proves that true comfort doesn't require modern technology. It just requires the right engineering. A different kind of power. In a world obsessed with horsepower figures and 0 to 60 times, it's easy to forget what real power feels like.